in person.
I'll forward it to you.
Okay, thank you.
Had people complain that the pool's too cold. And I was like, everyone on the swim team needs to write in it.
No, I have to participate. I have to hear it.
We can hear you. Us?
You guys.
It's not.
Oh, yeah, sorry, commissioners, the TVs up here are not working.
Okay, so we gotta.
So we will have a presentation, if we do it, on this, thank you, sorry, didn't find the word.
Keep telling.
Susan, I will share the screen so you can see the presentation as well.
Thanks, Cliff.
It's 5:32. I'll call the Planning Commissioning meeting for Tuesday, November 4th, 2025 to order. Roll call, please, Chris.
Ms. Proper,
Here.
Mr. Geller.
Here.
Mr. Lees,
Here. Here.
Mr. Guerra,
Here.
Ms. Gort,
Here.
and Mr. Fruchter.
Here.
Okay. Planning Commissioners, any change to the minutes tonight? Everybody good? Nope, stand as they are. Any changes to the agenda, Chris?
No changes.
Okay, with that, going to open the meeting to public comment on historic preservation issues that are not on the agenda this evening. As part of the certified local government, we are asked to take public comment on historic preservation issues in the community. And with that, we'll open the meeting to any public comment. Please raise your hand with the icon at the bottom of your screen or press *9 if you're attending the meeting by phone, and then *6 to unmute yourself.
No one online.
Nobody online. Anybody in attendance tonight wish to comment on preservation issues? No? And we'll close that part of the meeting and move on to the consent calendar, which we have the Climax Jerky Small Vendor Cart Permit Renewal at 100 South Main Street, PL 2025-0294. Do any commissioners wish to call this one up?
I still say all these we should be getting samples.
We should be getting samples. I've never had their jerky. Okay, with that, none, the consent calendar stands as approved. And we will move on to our works session, which is the McCain Open Space Plan. And Mr. Barlow and company will be presenting.
Laura, I'm going to go ahead and promote you as a panelist.
Tough.
There we go.
Thank you. Can everybody hear me okay?
I've already shared, so you
You scroll down, you get.
yes, we can hear you. You lose the mouse, go right.
Okay.
Down.
The presentation.
Okay.
Okay. Good evening, and thank you for having us. I appreciate you guys carving out the time to review this. I'll run through the process quickly that we've been through to get to this point, and you'll hear more about it, but you guys have a fresh perspective on this, and we appreciate being able to hear it. So I'm Duke Barlow, Town of Breck Open Space and Trails Manager, and I am with Sam Spicer and Craig Karn from THK, and Laura Hickey is attending virtually, and they're the consulting firm that we've hired to help us design the McCain Open Space Plan. They started work for us in May, and their contract will expire end of December. The plan is we'll get a recommended plan from them, and we'll start working on implementation in 2026, hoping to open this space to the public in spring 2027. This is the third round of engagement over the course of their contract. Each time they've come and had discussions with BOSAC and Town Council, and we've had various open houses and surveys and other meetings with stakeholders. And the first was in June, and then maybe one in August, September, and now this last round. We'll be meeting with council next week, and then final deliverables at the end of the year. One small point, and Mark, please elaborate, but this is a kind of a master plan within a larger master plan, so I don't think it will have to go to the Planning Commission for official approval. However, still would welcome any feedback you may have. Did I get that right?
Yeah, thanks, Duke. And yeah, I mean, the uses are all anticipated in the McCain Master Plan that the Planning Commission approved several years ago. I think 23 was the last time it was updated, and it allowed for open space and recreational uses. This is just drilling down on that even further. So it's not essential that you guys, you don't have to review this any further. The uses are already authorized, but certainly we're looking for your thoughts and input, and yeah.
So then with that, I will let Laura sort of start us off here. So Laura works with CDR Associates. They're our sort of public engagement consultant that we've been working with on our team. So she's just going to go through a really quick summary of sort of the process of everything, what we've seen out of the engagement that we've done with the public and the community and the city. So go ahead, Laura.
Thanks, Sam. I'll be really quick here, and I'm happy to answer any questions about further details about the public engagement following the presentation. But hi, everybody. Laura Hickey. I've been supporting the engagement that took place in 3 phases, as Duke alluded to. Our first phase of engagement was really focused on getting desires for access and amenities on the open space from the community. So you'll see many of those reflected in the draft plan that THK put together. What you see here on this slide is an overview of our phase 2 engagement, which is reflective of all the different interest groups and community members we've kind of touched throughout the engagement. So we've been meeting along the way with BOSAC, with Town Council, hosted 5 community meetings actually. And we have put together a story map, which is kind of an online interactive website where folks could access a survey for both that vision phase and for design concept phase. So the design concept phase, we presented out two kinds of concepts. And we also shared that with a survey and got some feedback there. Overall, we had a lot of engagement with the webpage. This says 721 views. I just checked, they're up to 900 views. There was one in English and one also translated and offered in Spanish. So lots of people hearing about the work and some really interested community members staying engaged, doing the surveys, coming to the meetings to give further input. We also coordinated with a lot of local partners and adjacent land managers and wildlife managers to make sure that everything on the site design is really, really thoughtful. You can go to the next slide. So what we heard from the community is presented here. On the left, like I mentioned, we had presented 2 design concepts in phase 2, and what we heard was a really strong preference for concept 2, which is the lighter touch design concept that Sam and Craig can speak a little bit more to. And even those who answered a mix of both really indicated a preference for concept 2 with some interest in additional river access. On the right here, this is just highlighting which of the kind of program feature areas folks were preferring, and it didn't really matter across if they preferred concept 1 or concept 2 or a mix of both. Everybody really appreciated the wildflower meadow and the river's edge area that has that wildlife viewing area. So kind of just confirms that lighter touch value from the community for an open space where they can experience nature and see wildlife and really appreciate the land. So if you want to go to the next slide, Sam, I'll just wrap up by saying in our last round of engagement, we have presented to BOZAC. We had a community meeting just a couple weeks ago and have gotten really great feedback from everybody, positive feedback on the final plan that you'll see tonight. And again, just reiterating that folks are really hoping to see this be a natural space that's enjoyable and appreciating how flat the area is and what that what opportunity that lends for access, and also with the location of the open space in town, kind of at the entryway, how that will influence and impact how many people attend the space or access the space once it's open. Like I mentioned, I will answer any questions, happy to answer any questions in depth, but want to hand it back over to THK, to the team, so that you can hear more about the plan itself.
Okay. Are there any questions so far?
I have several questions. So in the plan, you guys talk about making it accessible for levels. Is it any of this wheelchair accessible other than the main paved trail, I guess shown as 10
On the
along McCain Road?
on the graphic you're talking
Yeah.
about. Let's go to that page now since we're talking about it. To answer your question, yes. Because of how flat the site is, it will be possible to achieve grading work on all of the trails within the open space that will make them accessible, compliant in that way. And actually, soft surface versus hard surface is can contribute to some of that, but when it's done correctly, installed correctly and properly, crusher fine surfaces, soft surface trails are suitable for wheelchair accessibility, other types of mobility, that type of thing as well. So yes, really broad scope across the entire open space. It was a huge goal of ours to make sure that everything could be accessible. Kind of to relate back to what Laura was talking about, the nature of the site lends itself to being accessible. And with the nature of the site being flat, being open, the bottom of the valley, pretty much everywhere and anywhere within the open space provides a beautiful view of everything, both the mountains on the west side and then just sort of the nature aspects within the space as well, looking in the different directions. But yes, all of these access points, even the ones down to the water, those are intended to be fully accessible. And we sort of wanted to visit a couple of different ways to address the accessibility issues. And so when one of the things that has come up recently is actually what number 17 is showing, which is sort of an accessible parking area. That was really from a concern that with most people accessing the open space from the skier parking lot, that it's kind of difficult to get into the open space proper from there. And so we wanted to provide an alternative access point that sort of gets people who maybe don't necessarily want to walk along that entire way into the open space or up through there to get into the open space, to give them an option where you can pull off or park your vehicle and drop anyone off and then go park the car and then come back, sort of thing. And that was a direct feedback from the, sorry.
The
so-
Outdoor Education Center.
There we go. Sorry. The Outdoor Education Center. And so when we asked them if there's sort of a barrier by the parking being there, they said yes, and this would be one way to fix that. And so it's been very well received as well from the public, from BOSAC. We think it works well to providing that other alternative access point.
That's your note 17.
Any spots are there, or they can't park there long-term, they just have to drop off and then park?
I think that we would like to be able to make those spots accessible for however long someone needs to use them. There's 2 spots, and the reason we kept it minimum was just because it really is just parking for, ADA handicap accessibility access needs. We don't want to put any additional parking for anyone else there, just because we don't want to crowd that edge, but also it's just right off the road. So we want to try to keep that clear, everything. Especially for winter maintenance needs and stuff like that, since this McCain Road is going to be kind of the main way to get to the snow storage, which is what we're showing sort of in the middle of all of this.
So yes, parking, not a drop off.
Yeah, I just said drop off because if you don't need to park, then you could just drop it off. But obviously, if both spots were full, it couldn't function as a drop off.
And so if they did go park in the skier parking, is there going to be a path connecting to Trail 11 or whatever you call that?
I might address that. I'm Craig Carn. I'm the Director of Design with THK. We have talked about that with the temporary parking that's been constructed out there at such time as that becomes more permanent, looking at a better location possibly for the handicap parking. And we've also talked about looking at other trail connections to the open space at that time when and if that becomes a more permanent facility, and taking a little closer look at design in that regard. So it could change in the future, but right now this is how we hope to accommodate it.
And really, one of the things that we've seen is sort of just providing some sort of an access point between the Public Works snow storage lot and where we're showing the future skier parking, sort of where there's that notch in the middle of the open space, and then there's a berm above it. Sort of creating access from the forgive me on the direction here for a second, the southwest corner, even though this is oriented differently, the southwest corner being the top left corner, that's probably where we would have a connection. And it would likely just be a complete linear connection from the rec path that we're showing along McCain Road all the way up to wherever the connection to the trails within the open space are. Because then you sort of could just walk down to the end of the parking lot, walk up the sidewalk, and then you're in the open space. So that was something we talked about actually at pretty decent length with the public at our last meeting a couple of weeks ago, because they had similar sort of concerns. They were like, well, while it's not a massive distance, it certainly would be nice if it was easier to get into the space from there. So I think that is definitely something we want to look at.
All right, I have another question. It looks like the trails, I went out and walked along the river, and there's kind of an informal trail really close to the river that's actually really nice location. But it doesn't look like the future trail is going to be in that location. It's much further from the river. Is there a reason why it's not right along the river?
Yeah, so with the way that the river was restored, we want to try to protect the investment, but also just the restoration efforts in general. And we'll dive in real briefly on river morphology for a second, but the point bars, which is where we have 5, 6, and 2, and even 7 on this map, are the areas where the river naturally deposits sediment as it flows through there. And so it's constantly rebuilding those inside edges. The opposite is true on the outside banks, which would be sort of the spot in between 2 and 5, closest to the 11, the spot in between 5 and 6, similar sort of horseshoe looking shapes. Wherever you have that you're on the outside, that longer edge, you're actually, the river's edge is more prone to erosion from the river itself, but also from any pressure from the top surface, because the river naturally eats away at those inside edges with some pretty significant force. And so we want to try to limit heavy foot traffic in any of those areas that would be, environmentally sensitive, which is why we're trying to provide up close down to the river access at 5 and 6, for example. It's a little hard to see, but there's sort of a little line that goes around all of these. Those are a very narrow trail. we're proposing that the trails would sort of get narrower as you get closer to the water. So, you know, you have a 10-foot paved trail with a 4-foot shoulder for the rec path through the open space. But then the soft surface trails get a little bit smaller, and then the access points off of those soft surface trails down to those nodes are a little bit smaller. And then the nodes themselves, any trails that are there are then smaller still. So it's kind of like a 10, 8, 4, 2.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
there are two, so
It's
That
kind of like a single
look
track.
wide enough for a wheelchair, right?
Yes.
But they're going to be graded.
You need 36 inches of minimum clearance. And so we'll want to provide that in where we're providing handicap access to the shoreline.
Okay.
And like Sam says, we're trying to give people a destination so that they don't just wander all along all the banks indiscriminately. And we also have some concepts for details of how we can also manage some of that foot traffic. I'd call it a natural fence. We have no shortage of cobblestone. And just as a not as quite a serious fisherman as many people are up here, you avoid walking on them. And so we have the idea that without building actual fences per se, that we can do landscape and planting treatments to give people access where we want them, but then, you know, kind of informally direct them away from the shoreline, make it difficult to want to walk in the places where people will tend, where we want to keep them off those cut banks and try to protect that. And that actually helps to protect the quality of the fishing as well, because that's where that's where the fish really like to lie, is under those cut banks. And so we're balancing that, you know, that wanting to provide access with you know, protecting the great resource. The fish resource is already doing really well out there, and there's a lot of people anxious to be able to get out there and fish.
Yeah, and so I guess just briefly, I know we can sort of see what these feature areas are, but I kind of want to just highlight really quickly what they kind of are. This sort of number one is just the gateway, we're calling it, to the open space. That's because we see a lot of the primary access into the area via car traffic, via foot traffic, via bike traffic. That's all sort of going to be coming in from the left. And so we want to create a sort of arrival where you get a nice view straight into the open space. You can make that connection immediately. And that's really all that feature area is. There's no specific like programming there other than just sort of creating an arrival. Then we have the river's edge, which is number two. What's unique about this location is that our environmental consultants, ERO, have actually identified this area that's marked by the yellow asterisk as a potential location for a roosting/nesting platform, because there are raptor species in the area. They just aren't stopping and staying on the site because there really is no suitable place for them to do so. But with that land on the west side of the river being protected, being, you know, partially by the town ownership, but then also the U.S. Forest Service land, there's going to be far fewer foot traffic. And we want to also, that's part of why we're not programming that side of the river, is we want to try to limit the desire and eventual migration across the river to those other spaces. And we've also heard from the Forest Service that they are appreciative of that because they don't have any sort of infrastructure over there to support people crossing and doing all of that. So certainly opportunities in the future, but they were appreciative to see that we weren't doing that. But that provides us the opportunity to give from this sort of where these four arrows are emanating from near the number two, we would like to put a wildlife viewing platform there, whether it's a bird blind or just something that, you know, provides an elevated space that you can see straight over the meadow, over the river, straight to the nesting platform, really just creating a way to interact with the wildlife there. And then when you move over to number three, that's the opportunity to create sort of a panoramic overlook site. Really, we see that as being sort of a boardwalk accessible or boardwalk accessed circular platform that just you can sort of stand and get a panoramic view out over the entire open space and of all of the mountains surrounding, because that's sort of central. It's at a high point. It's out of the floodplain. So we can do some stuff there that we wouldn't want to do near the river. And so really being able to get people, even the 3, 4, 5 feet off the ground makes a big difference, especially when you have a site that's as flat as this one is. It's only 50 feet of fall from the left side to the right side extents. So over the, whatever it is, you know, at the 1,500, 2,000 feet long, you're only going down 50 feet. So it's a pretty flat site. Number 5 is our wildflower meadow. this is the idea of sort of creating a kickstart wildflower area where the intent would be to plant it with the native wildflower species that grow up here in this climate at this elevation. And then over time, those would sort of volunteer and spread throughout the space without the need for human intervention in that way. Like we don't need to go out and spread wildflower seed over the entire site. For one, that would be insanely expensive, but for two, it's just not necessary because as long as these are planted correctly and have what they need, they will spread on their own. And so we're trying to restore the sort of native riparian ecosystem that exists in these environments where these rivers come through these moraines up in the mountains. And so help facilitating that and kickstarting that. But we've heard really great feedback on that because we're also providing some river access in this location. We want to have a picnic grove where people are able to sort of eat under the trees and sort of enjoy being out by the water. That was one of those things that was sort of different between concept 1 and concept 2 was we were proposing shade structures or some sort of structure in these locations to, have a more robust facility if needed, if wanted. And we heard that for the most part, that's not something people are interested in. They'd much rather see this be sort of a grove of trees that grows over time and sort of creates the shade naturally and really keeping it natural that way. And then we have number 6, which is our picnic and play. So that's kind of similar to number 5. It just doesn't have the wildflower meadow. This is another location we'd like to do more access to the river. And this is sort of a place for some discovery play, which is basically, non-standard playground equipment. So boulders, rocks, logs, things that are arranged in such a way that when kids play on them, it's sort of a sense of adventure, like you go up the hill, you can go through the log, that kind of stuff. Those are the types of play features that we would be proposing out here, really keeping it natural, keeping it with the space and sprinkling that throughout the entire space. But this location just happens to be a node for a handful of those activities. And then number 7 is, to wrap it up, is sort of just an accessory space that is very similar to number 6, but it's there because it's in close proximity to Vista Verde. And we wanted to provide the residents of that complex with a quick access into the open space where they can appreciate it, they can use it, but they don't need to go all the way down and into the open space to do so. We wanted to provide a close proximal option for them. So that's a very high level view of what all of that is, but we're keeping program to a minimum. And it's very much just natural improvements, access improvements, and things that can get people out here and into the space. We're not proposing any major structures. We're not looking at doing anything like that. We want to keep it very natural. So that's kind of the high level of those things. And then I guess the last thing that we would like to cover is just that there's sort of a broader discussion about what happens to the rec path. We'd like to hear what you all's opinion is on that. I think because we're just trying to field sort of where everyone's at with the idea. What we're showing here is sort of misleading because we're still labeling the Blue River Bikeway as it sits, but the intent behind this concept is sort of that the rec path would be vacated in its current location and then moved to within the open space and then along McCain Road and then along the north side of the future skier parking and then eventually tying back into the extension of the rec path that was built behind Vista Verde that currently just dead ends. And the reason why we're proposing this is because we've heard a lot from various people and everything that there is some very serious safety concerns about the bikeway crossing McCain Road right here next to Coin Valley Road. But also that down at the Fairview roundabout, there's a big safety concern there. And doing this very much addresses that issue because you kind of bypass both of those hazardous locations because by the time you get down past Vista Verde, the rec path is already past the Fairview roundabout. So there would be some more beyond Vista Verde that would need to be figured out. But in terms of this stretch of it, we can figure out a way to avoid those with routing it this way. So I guess that's pretty much.
It's also an important kind of balancing act of the discussions all along, because what we continue to hear when we started this, right, the open space master plan kind of spoke to this as a front country open space. The challenge was going to be balancing recreation with conservation, right? Protecting the investment in the river and what we thought might be people's desires to see this as more of a park-like space and more urban and more programmed events. And so that our original concepts presented those alternatives. But we've pretty consistently heard that we keep it natural. That also said that consistently, we didn't want to add any more hard paving than we needed to make this function. And so we've worked with staff and Public Works and even, you know, a lot of the people that engaged with us to try to come to a good balance. I think this can work with or without the abandonment or removal of the existing rec path. I think it can work with or without that. I know that's just a subject of a discussion right now.
So on that rec path abandonment, it like trail number 10 would essentially become the rec path?
Right.
Yeah.
Or it may stay in place. It may be that this gives people a safer alternative where they can, not have to engage those crossings and or just for more of non-cyclist users, right? Or
Pedestrian.
long ago when I
stroller
had
and stuff,
a
sort of.
5-year-old and a 2-year-old where you can go out there and feel a little more comfortable on tricycles and things
Sure.
like that. I think the serious cyclists, and we've had discussions with staff, and Duke may want to add to this, they're going to tend to stay either on McCain Road because there's bike lanes on McCain Road, or they'll stay on the rec path depending on, those kind of riders generally are a little braver in crossing the intersections. And
Sure.
we think it kind of meets everybody's need.
Yeah, I'll just add, we've been talking more about this at a staff level, and we want to prioritize safety concerns between rec path users and vehicles. And granted, we also want to try to separate user types within the open space, but by eliminating the old Blue River Bikeway, you're no longer crossing McCain Road and you're not going through Fairview Roundabout. And so if we do this number 10, as you described, and it continues to parallel McCain Road and then jog west and go west of Vista Verde, that's kind of tucking it next to the road and on the edge of the open space, but avoiding those safety concerns. So it feels like the best option we have. And then to Craig's point, people that are comfortable riding a bike with traffic and want to go faster may take McCain Road anyway, just to buzz through there. But at least there'll be a safe alternative that is on the edge of the open space and shouldered by a natural surface path, which will separate users a little bit more.
Yeah, that was actually one of the things that we have heard recently is sort of they liked that, they being everyone we've spoken to so far, but between 9 and 4, basically the rec path portion that's within the open space boundary, we are proposing that 10-foot paved, 4-foot soft surface. And that's really because runners, joggers, anyone like that, it's very much preferred to run on a soft surface. It's just easier on the body. And so we wanted to provide that. We also heard from the cross-country coach that they were desiring a soft surface loop within the open space. And so we've tried very hard to keep a solid length loop here for that purpose. But what we've heard is sort of, why does the soft surface edge have to stop at the edge of the open space? And we think that's a very valid point. We could continue that soft surface edge all the way along the rec path, all the way up until it ties into Vista Verde if we wanted to. And that provides sort of that larger loop that you could do, incorporating that portion of the trail between Vista Verde and the sort of YT that's in the middle of the open space. And so that's been a fairly popular idea. There was definitely some concern about access into the snow storage lot and into the parking lot with the trail running right in front of it here. And so I know that the town and Duke has been working on trying to figure out, I guess, to some extent, what we could do for sort of, I don't want to say like abandonment because it wouldn't be abandonment, but not using the alignment of the rec path that goes along McCain Road during the winter season when those two spaces are being utilized for their purposes, and then instead realigning the rec path to follow sort of from 17 to 16 to 11 to 12 to 14 that way up through the open space. That way that you're just bypassing any of the concern, because with plows coming in and out of the snow storage lot, with skiers coming in and out of the parking lot, if buses coming in and out of the parking lot, it's going to be a hazardous situation, very much like the Fairview Roundabout is today. So I do think it's a good idea to come up with an alternative alignment based off of the season. And so we're able to do that with this setup pretty efficiently too.
We would figure out a groomed route through here, just like we have, we'll continue grooming all the way to Frisco. It just wouldn't parallel the McCain Road for concerns about skier parking and snow storage. We just have to figure out on the ground where it makes the most sense through the open space and connecting with the rec path west side of Vista Verde.
To clarify what you're saying, groomed, meaning the cross-country
Yeah.
trail, winter trail. Yeah.
Winter grooming. Thank you, Ethan.
So we'll, the 14, so basically you're gonna continue a path behind Vista Verde, and would it go behind, what do they call it, Highland Shores? Or would it,
That already exists and it goes behind Vista Verde and then it actually crosses Stan Miller Drive just north of the water treatment plant and will connect
Okay.
with the existing rec path
got
there.
it,
So
okay.
right now, this is kind of an isolated patch that was built with Vista Verde and we just need to tie it into
Got
this concept.
And then will the meadow, will that be like cut short so like you can walk on the meadow? Number 8.
Yeah, so I don't know that we would necessarily need to cut it short. There are certainly seed types that we can plant out there that don't grow very tall.
Okay.
Um,
But that's for like, you can,
Yeah, I mean, I think we'd probably want to, I don't know that we would delineate that this is a space where you can go, but I don't think we would put fences up to say, oh, you can't go in here.
a wildflower meadow, you wouldn't have people walking on. That'll be
You know, I think that's,
discouraged from people trampling on the wildflower.
yeah, I think you could probably come up with a creative way to get people into that meadow without having to worry about that. You know, the Botanic Gardens does a great job of that, where they have a beautiful meadow and they sort of just have little trails that meander through it, and that because they have a controlled route to go, most people, they just stay on the trail because really all they want is to be able to get in and see it better. So
And there may be some friendly signage to
Yeah.
remind people it's a sensitive area. In fact, when we did some of the early concepts, I found some good examples from where I'm from back in Western Michigan, where they actually built boardwalks to protect the sand dunes, and they just put friendly signage to remind people to stay on the trail. It's a sensitive environment, so we'll do what we can. And I found that if you give people good, comfortable trails and give them a way to get to the shoreline, they'll generally stay on the trails. But we'll find out too. We may have to modify things as we see how people engage.
because there's the sort of meadow played a dual purpose. For one, it was a way to preserve a big chunk of space to stay as space. But the other thing is that, you know, with the elk population on the west side of the river and the deer population that's out there, we know that there's migration in and through the site. And so we wanted to facilitate that in whatever way we could, which is also part of why you won't see a trail connection directly next to the river between these first 3 nodes. And that's because we see that sort of as being a corridor that wildlife can utilize should they want to come down into the open space and graze. I know that they've already done so, as they've been on the other side of McCain Road during the winter events that you guys have from that, since that's where the hay gets stored for the reindeer. I heard that, so I know that they've made their way down there in the past, but really just trying to facilitate that. And so we may see elk, we may never see elk, but they have a chance to do so. And then again, working with our environmental consultants, we'd like to sort of recommend plant material that could go out there that might entice them, such as what they like to graze on, planting that, as well as whatever we want for, you know, the native seeding that would do well out there. Those types of things, really trying to create this sense of stewardship and really letting the open space be a part of the land and not so much directing what's going on the land.
And then a comment is, right now, when you're on the Blue River Parkway riding north and you're basically, there's really good mature trees that are screening you from the Public Works lot and the Snow Bridge lot and all that less appealing, less attractive stuff to look at. But if you now have the rec path going along McCain Road, you're gonna actually see both the skier parking lot, the snow storage lot, and the stuff on the left. I think I commented last time that there's a mountain of dirt because I ride McCain Road now when I go through there. Is there any thought to putting some screening on both sides of that path so you don't on those sections, so you don't? I mean, it'd take a few years to grow, but
I think there's certainly opportunities to do so. In fact, we drove by and to look at the temporary skier parking that's been built. And they have constructed some berms that were part of even that temporary improvement.
Okay.
I think there's key areas We have to work real good with Public Works and particularly in the snow storage to make sure that it's just really important that they have that. But some of the corner areas, like you can see where those view arrows are, there may be areas where we can modify that as we see how their operations.
You could do some piles of fake mine tailings. And so it'll make the
It
historic
fits in the context, quite
historic
frankly,
society
the
will be
cobbles,
happy.
There definitely are opportunities to do so. I think for all of the, the public works spaces and the like along there,
Yeah.
I think that'll evolve in time as they're kind of just settling into how they can use this space, and we're trying to help them figure that out. But we have talked about future opportunities again as the school site issue gets resolved, and if that does, come back to ownership, then we can make more concrete decisions about how we might do some of that. But pretty easy stuff to do. You don't have to build a really giant berm because one of the things we would want to balance with landform is we don't want to build landforms that do a great job of screening the snow storage or the parking area, but then corrupt the views. Right?
Yeah.
So it's a pretty good balance.
Yeah.
Act. We really want to, the most important thing is to do what we can do to not see the surfaces out there in the summertime when we would hope that it's green. But those are nuances that we'll just have to work on as those spaces develop. There's opportunities to make some refinements there.
And we are trying to make some improvements within the open space itself with these berms that we're showing sort of adjacent the snow storage lot. That would really sort of serve as that buffer for anyone who's within the open space. So at least from a user experience, when you're in the open space, we're going to try really hard to keep that clean and not just like completely obstructed with what's out there. And I think that the berming we're showing here with some supplementary planting, et cetera, would be pretty effective at doing so. And so, we're trying with the room and the space that we have to work with to come up with some creative solutions there. So, but it's definitely a concern. And that was something that we've been thinking about the whole time, is just sort of how do we work with all of these uses and get the best result for everybody, the open space users, public works, everyone. So, yeah. Are there any other questions?
Mark, Mike?
I've got a few. To state the obvious, this was previously industrial usage space. Previous to that, it was destroyed by the mining companies. And previous to that, it was forested. So what are your thoughts about reforestation eventually on this space? What do you see in terms of vegetation there 20, 30 years from now?
I think that's a great question. That reforestation can be really important to the continuing recovery of the fish population in the river, because that shade is important to keep the water cool. And, for reproduction and just for the fish to have a good, healthy habitat. I think I would balance that with the main open space, the number 8, the broader spaces, to try to keep those open, because it's a rare opportunity when you're out on that site to have that kind of panoramic view. And so we kind of see that core meadow wanting to stay open and keep that sense of openness out there. But I think it's important to let the natural forest recover along the river. In fact, we'll focus a lot of our plantings there, because the river improvement, they actually constructed a liner to help because of all the mining. And you all know, it's kind of interesting. Actually, when I first came to Colorado in 1983, I worked at DHM and actually worked on some of the original plans to convert some of this to usable when it was still just cobble piles for miles along the river. But with the river reconstruction, they basically created a lens under it so that the water would stay up and not run 40 feet below the ground like it used to do. And so we're going to focus a lot of our new plantings in that, because what they did with that stretches out quite a bit further, almost in a lot of places to where we show that main trail alignment. So we want to focus our plantings there, because there's just going to be better moisture levels for the plants to, the forest to be viable. And so that's another reason we focus.
I appreciate your comment. It would seem to me that the reforestation is basically a landscape design function. And were you to design that in such a way that new trees would go in where you want them and not in the meadow area, we could have a really nice plan, again, looking 20, 30 years down the road. And there are other municipalities that have reforestation in their planning process and in their building process. I come from the East Coast, and we regularly, when we built, I did single family individual pieces, not subdivisions, but it applied to subdivisions as well. When you went in and you took trees down, you had to replace those trees. So it seems to me there's an opportunity here for the town to say to new people who are going to build new homes, and I don't think we're going to have a whole lot of that, enough to reforest this whole thing, but it would not be a huge obligation for somebody coming in who's going to build a $5 or $6 million home to spend some money to provide 5 trees, 10 trees, 15 trees as a condition of being able to build wherever they're building to reforest this
I
area.
think it's a great idea.
Great idea.
What,
Plan that could accommodate that so that the town could say, yeah, this is where they go.
Yeah.
yeah, so as we.
And the town could use Public Works. The town could say the builder needs to use the landscape contractor that is involved building the home to come down and plant the trees properly. These are small details that could be worked out to incentivize the reforestation of this space.
I think that's a great idea. I've done a lot of work in Arvada, Colorado over the years, and their mitigation requirements. So most of the jurisdictions in Metro Denver, have mitigation requirements because you guys have a lot more trees up here than we do in Denver, and it's very, very important. Denver is one of the most heavily impacted by the urban heat island effect of any cities in America, and so forestation is really important there for different but similar reasons. Keep the city cool. But Arvada's tree mitigation requirements don't obligate you to mitigate the trees on your site. You can take the mitigation and you can put it on other public sites. This would be a great opportunity for that, to rather than trying to find a way to mitigate trees on a single family home site or a bigger development, to have to, sometimes it feels like you're just having to pack them in there to meet the mitigation requirement. This would be a great place to be a receiver location of.
Well, from a
mitigation
financial
planting.
standpoint, it allows the town to kind of mitigate whatever money taxpayers would be putting in to do some of this work and put some of that burden on people that want to come in and build new homes and capitalize on that opportunity to share a little bit disproportionately in the expense of reforestation of this space.
And of course, it would help with the success rate of the reforestation too, because you have a sort of constant invigoration of putting new trees out there. So even if you have dieback, you're going to replenish it in some way, shape, or form anyway. Even with the natural processes, they're going to do that. The trees are going to regenerate themselves, but having hands putting actual trees out there in a somewhat regular capacity is only going to help facilitate the process of getting vegetation established out here. So
One of the key goals of your open space master plan was really along those lines of building stewardship as well, because this builds connectivity with the community to the space by doing that. It's a great way to build stewardship.
There'd be opportunities for the town to offer philanthropic opportunities to contribute X dollars for this number of trees. And, it could be something that happens every fall when businesses here are looking for, where can I make a donation? It's just another opportunity.
Sounds great. It's just like the parks people in Denver. They get thousands of trees planted every year by doing stuff like that.
Mark, I think that's a good idea. One thing, my understanding why maybe you don't see more robust, trees everywhere was we're trying to set up, planting them. There's not going to be irrigation provided. So we're trying to provide them in the areas where we're going to have natural overflow of water from the river and that kind of thing.
That's what I'm saying. That's why it's a landscape design kind of feature. And perhaps some of that irrigation water could be planned into the river providing it. But I understand you can't go out there and put artificial irrigation in to maintain that.
There are very subtle things we can do with landform as we develop these activity areas too, where you can just directing rainfall. I've done a lot of work throughout the whole Southwest and learned a lot about rainwater capture and passive rainwater capture and how you can just direct water off of places to where the planting wants to be, and it works really well. So those are things we'll look at
Again,
as this
that's
moves
a-
into
that's a
future
landscape
implementation.
design function.
Yeah. Very cool.
I have a question about the multi-purpose trail and the soft surface trail. And I'll make an assumption that they're two separate things. In other words, we're not looking to allow bikes on the 8-foot soft surface trail.
Ethan, I suppose that hasn't been decided, but our thought was, yes, we would. We would restrict bikes or those little spurs that go towards the river. So like 11 and 12, as I'm looking at the map, we'd have like a bike rack or something and encourage walking to the river. But we would let bikes use these internal soft surface trails, internal circulators.
Okay. That's really all my only question. Thanks. Appreciate it. Any other questions?
I have a couple more.
Yeah.
Have you thought about making, so kids really like to do loops. It's like, I always bring this up. It's my thing, huh? And I'm looking at this and there's kids living in Vista Verde and they're going to come out with their parents. And what loop are they going to do? They're going to do the big loop, right? All the way over to where number 11 is and then come down and go along the road and then come back up, right? That's pretty big, especially if you have a little kid on a bike. So have you thought about like doing a loop through the Public Works snow storage lot? Just so there's something, or through the skier parking during the summer, something like that. And also it's a big concern, this corner of Vista Verde, it's kind of a sharp turn. And if little kids are on their like training wheel, tiny bike, I mean, I'm sure you guys think of all this stuff too, you know, or someone's on a wheelchair or someone's just walking with their 3 dogs. That's, yeah, so.
So in terms of, I'll answer the easy question first. In terms of the corner, the turning radius there, if you look at the alignment of McCain Road down in the bottom left corner of the future skier parking, you see how tight that radius is? The road. And then if you go look at the trail again in that location, it is significantly wider in a radius. And so if a car, I don't want to like make this seem, but like if a car can make that turn going 20, 25 miles an hour and have no issues, then someone on a bike can take that really elongated turn into Vista Verde and they're going to have no problem. I mean, you'll know that you're on a turn, but I would say that you probably wouldn't even feel the forces going through that turn unless you were going pretty darn quick. But also, this is a conceptual alignment. So when design development were to take place, like we would look at that and ensure that like the radius is appropriate, the slope's appropriate, that sort of thing. So
Yeah. From having done a lot of trail planning like this, a kind of a general industry standard for a paved trail is not to have less than a 200-foot radius on it. So it's comfortable, but it does encourage high-speed cycling. Some of the alignments around Vista Verde are a little bit straight, and we're hoping that by having some curves in the trail here, it'll calm the cyclists down. And again, I think more of the serious cyclists will stay on McCain Road, but it's always a balancing act to want it to not be awkward and also to have some consistency. So it's kind of like even driving a car on a road. If you've got some consistent radiuses, it's easier and more comfortable to ride on the trail. So that's something we'll work on.
You don't think the corner of the building obstructs view?
not being 150 feet off the corner of the building, I wouldn't say so.
Okay.
It's a valid concern because it's certainly too at this scale, it's hard to sort of see where like what the impact of that is. But it kind of plays, the scale is kind of what plays into your other question as well. And I sort of, there's two issues. One is that in terms of running trails through the public works storage lot or the skier parking, that's a very difficult process because the snow storage lot is set up the way that it is because that is what is needed for them to store the snow appropriately. And so any disturbance to that in any capacity is probably a no-go. However, when we sort of were talking earlier about what might happen in between these two parcels to provide better access into the open space itself, I think that is sort of the best opportunity then to look at how we could create some of those smaller loops.
So you're talking about between the
Yeah.
storage lot and
And the skier
Skier
parking, like that
right.
sort of vertical
Right.
line, like
So you could
through
have a
here,
smaller
could have a
loop
connection
closer to the
through
river.
here. And then we could sort of create another loop of the trail here or something so that if someone was to come in from Vista Verde, they could sort of do a little loop. There's different ways to do it, but the other thing I was thinking too is you can get pretty creative with the way that you put your trail maps, open space maps, that sort of thing out here, and sort of suggesting what paths people should take, even if it's not a clear loop. You know, I see it as, well, what if you came in from Vista Verde, followed the trail all the way along up into number 2, and then did the little loop by number 2, and then just went back the way that you came. Obviously, it's not a full loop in terms of being an entirely different experience for 360 degrees of the loop of the trail that you're doing. But with the limit of space here, we're trying as best as we can to provide as many opportunities to sort of double back on yourself, go in and route differently. I mean, there's so many different ways you could take these trails through the open space that you could probably come up with a pretty creative routing and pathing pretty much any time you're out here. You know, well, we're going to go up to 5 today, and then we're going to cut over, and then we're going to loop back this way. So I don't know. I kind of see it as being as a whole, less of a, you're going to come here and take one trail with the intent of that one trail being a 2-mile loop or something like that. I think it's really the open space as an experience as a whole. You're not going to, you know, there's that's sort of the intent.
I'm just not seeing a loop for really young kids.
Yeah, I mean, I think these areas that are down by the
Distance. I mean,
Yeah.
10-year-old, no problem.
I mean, I think just the context of going back, we've kind of, you know, for the plan for this area, you know, really the plan for the open space has gotten the most, you know, kind of valuable from like a nature or site experience, like of the site. You know, there's always been things that we really need that program out here because we're just losing more and more space. So, you know, we asked our public works director, James Phelps, basically, what is the minimum amount of snow storage? And even from there, it seems like they continuously shrink. And we're at a point where if we don't program it here, we'll have to spend a lot more money to truck it even further and further away to land that we really don't have. So, you know, we went from a plan that just had open space on the western edge, the preserve for wildlife, to really getting the benefit of both sides of the river here. And also, you know, if you were to fill in, you know, Craig and Sam have a great, you know, it looks so nice here, how the color, and it looks so stark on the other side, but everything's to be like kind of feathered in. It's not to be this hard rectangular line there. And then you also have to account that we have the 150 foot separation from Highway 9, even the McCain Road, that really is open space. And then we have the whole national forest there. So this is just a very nice area where we've done river restoration, and I think is something that's unique within the open space portfolio. But it also is 15 acres in the valley that has 100,000 acres of open space in it, and only 4,000 acres of urbanized area. So, you know, unlike a lot of the places they work where, you know, we mentioned Arvada and Washington Park and stuff, where you have kind of the inverse of not having much, and that's the only thing. This is just a nice, you know, kind of new complementary role in the open space. And I think that, you know, they've done such a nice job here of illustrating the area that in some ways it makes it look like it's not kind of feathered and tapered in there. And so there's a lot of different, almost competing interests, but I think we really are getting the best portion of this corridor, you know, through this plan, and what's been dedicated as open space.
Chris, on the east side of McCain Road, there's 2 parcels that really aren't identified. Are those privately owned parcels? One across from Public Works, the other across from where the new skier parking is going to be?
I can answer that. Since I was grabbing Chris's mic here, that's all the town owns all that as well, Mark.
Sorry?
The town owns all that as well. That's all part of the McCain property.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And so
So-
that's leased?
Yeah,
to
we
people
lease,
that
we
are-
lease part of it for, you know, there's a couple businesses that are there, landscaping business. And then we also, I believe there's also some more snow storage on the other side as well. Although I could be mistaken about that. We've also left those dredge piles there of the tailings. You know, the historic, rec history has wanted to see some of
And the
that
town owns
preserved.
that as well?
Yes, we own it all. We own everything out to Highway 9. Yeah. The one other thing I wanted to mention is, I get your point about, Elaine, about a smaller loop for the kids, and maybe there's a way, like Sam said, we can fit something in. This isn't a huge area. I
It's
think,
deceptive
I
looking
think
at the.
when you look at the map, you think we got a big area we're working with,
And I
and
I
it's,
think
you know,
with
it's,
kids, it's
yeah.
pretty far to bike all the way down to 2 and come back, and then I don't know how you turn around back at Vista Verde too. So I just encourage you to look at maybe working something in.
I think as it evolves, as we develop, you know, as we phase this work, that corridor to the north, as the school site gets resolved, if that's going to get returned to the city. Chris, you did a great job of reminding us all that those squares, those are just lines on a map. And so you don't really necessarily see them on the ground out there. And so, you know, there's going to be opportunities. I call it rubbing the points off of things out there, and you won't, they won't seem as evident as property lines do on the map.
Maybe you just do a roundabout where it connects with the thing coming off of McCain Road. You have a bike roundabout or something. I don't know.
Yeah, we can look at
Something-
that. But you're right, and it's for all life stages, because it's not only little ones, it's as people get older, their walks
I'm gonna
change.
be able to take my wheelchair out here when I'm old.
Right. You don't want to have.
Hour
flying around that
train.
thing.
I mean, just for a great viewpoint of this parcel is if you're on the upper flume, kind of right at the junction of Mike's, and you look down, and really already today with the river restoration work, it looks pretty spectacular. And I think with a lot of the things that the THK team is planning in the future will look that much better. But I think that's maybe the best, you know, kind of viewpoint in the town to kind of see already what work has been done and kind of where it's going in the future.
I was wondering about drainage off of the snow storage lot. Is there any, will it just perk down through the old dredge rock in that location, or is there any drainage structure or detention?
They've constructed a detention pond,
And a swale.
an infiltration pond. They want most of that to infiltrate, but then there is a swell that if they get volumes or it's really running, you know, and during spring runoff, that it can move out to the river. It's one of the reasons that they wanted to keep it more linear and along McCain so that snow storage could be further away from the river.
I guess I do see it now, kind of.
It's out there, and
Okay.
yeah, I mean, but given the types of soils and the cobble underneath it's all here, it's pretty easy
Yeah.
to create infiltration. There'll probably be nominal runoff, other than when you get a nice warm spring snow and it's all melting like crazy everywhere.
Snow storage is, if you go there in the spring, it's ugly.
Litter.
I mean,
and
there's all
everything's
kinds
there.
of trash and dirt that comes out and everything. It is not an attractive thing. Yeah.
Susan, do you have any comments? We don't want to forget you up there.
Thanks a lot. I'm good. Thanks.
Okay.
May I speak to what you just said? I'm working on the Soul Center immediately north of this site. And we were surprised both springs how little the site perks. And it's the same, you know, dredge rock spoils. But the sites are really silted out. And at least there it's holding water. I mean, we had standing water on site for weeks at a time.
That would explain why the seeding is doing so well.
Yeah.
Well, that's actually a good thing to know that.
Oh, yeah.
Not as bad as it used to be when the river was running 30 feet below the.
I remember those days.
I have another question. I'm just full of them. In the area 8, there's a lot of like big cobblestones, and are they gonna remove those or just keep it all there? Like, is this supposed to be for kids to run around
I
on?
think it could be good. Yeah, they're still pretty bumpy out there. So and then that's what will work as we get into some phase 1 implementation plans is I think that at least that main area out there could probably stand probably some diversity of the grasses, although what's out there is doing really well. And it might be nice to not have it be quite as.
A little easier to walk across.
But the good thing about that too is like we spoke to earlier, you know, there's going to be a need to want to create some of those natural barriers to the river and to other places within the site with like cobble rock and vegetation and such. So if there was some clearing of that sort of top surface of cobble rock, we can source it from the site directly. There's no need to go elsewhere to get that material, right? And so that's a little bit of a cool way to utilize material that's already going to be there. It helps play into the stewardship thing a bit too, but it's like rather than just tilling the ground and seeding it or something to get the rock out so that it's safer for that sort of an activity space, like let's use that rock on the site in other places where we need it, and then go from there. But it kind of facilitates that idea of stewardship and taking what you already have and using that instead of going and grabbing some foreign material to do that. But no, definitely, because it is pretty bumpy in that part of the space.
That's all my questions.
That's it? Okay. Any other questions, comments? No, we can open up to any public that would like to comment or question. If there's anybody in the audience or is there anybody, well, Cliff's not here monitoring. Okay. Well, thanks very much, guys.
Thank you for your time.
Great input.
Patient,
You've made the
really.
plan even better just with your input.
Great questions.
Thank you.
Love the
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Restoration.
Yeah.
When we created
That was great. It's interesting.
Thanks, guys.
That'd be nice.
spring fed from.
I like
that's what
DC's
not
title.
working today. Yeah.
Trail along the river. It trails out with traffic.
We'll see you. Yeah, get you next week.
I mean, I'm new.
But it's extremely complicated.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Yeah, we had to sink.
What's that? Oh, thanks, dude.
Yes, you're there for the view.
Dozen wells in here. early
All right.
tomorrow morning.
Mark, do you want to give us an update?
Town council, yeah, sure. October 28th, let's see.
That's another complicated factor.
They got a little presentation and they went out to the BOEC to look at their kind of vision plan for the next few years. BOEC is going to totally replace their ropes course.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a bunch of other things they got going there too. There's a couple new buildings they're looking at installing over time to, house some of their staff, like interns and stuff like that. Big expanded parking area that they're proposing as well. And then they're gonna have like a little entrance office, visitor center where it would kind of receive people when they first show up to check in that. So those are just a few highlights, but anyway.
In the area where they are now.
Yes, yes. And so anyway, that is, they're starting out with that, and they wanted to share their presentation with the council. Much like what we just saw in here, there's nothing that's really going to require us to approve a master plan or anything like that for that. There may be some town project associated with some of these items that comes back to you guys at some future point in time. But anyway, the council was pretty supportive of that. So, and as well, let's see, what else did we have going here? There's going to be a big, what is it called? Rockstar? Anyway, tied in with Uller, there's going to be a big kind of celebration going on, rail jam and everything. Ski area and the town are both going in on it. So it's going to be big concert they're planning. So that's coming up in the end of December. The ICC codes went for adoption or for a work session, and we've been talking about the energy code updates. This is all the codes. The 10, 12 ICC codes have to be adopted to update for the 6-year cycle. So the council is pretty good with all that. Probably the biggest question had to do with sprinklering. Red, white, and blue, and the other fire district here in the county are promoting, I think we've told you guys this, to move from a 6,000 square foot limit down to 4,500 square feet in terms of the sprinkling requirements. And so there's a healthy discussion about that, some questions about the cost in that.
Mark, I got a
And so the
hypothetical
council,
about that.
yeah,
If somebody has, greater than 4,500 square feet, but less than 6,000, they have a home that's unsprinkled. If they want to do some renovation within that space, does that trigger the 4,500? And would they have to go back and sprinkle everything that has been done previously? How does that work? Because that's a huge cost.
go ahead, Mike, because you may know better than I.
The answer is, it depends upon the code triggers, the extent of the remodel. But if you do a moderate to full remodel, yes. And I think there's some percentages like, I can't remember what the trick.
Yeah, or there may be a square footage. For example, if you do an addition, you gotta sprinkle the addition. You don't necessarily have to sprinkle the entire existing home. So there's,
Because going back and retrofitting that in the finished space would be just
Yeah.
incredibly expensive.
I think what Mike is saying is if you're going in and doing a major remodel in the existing space and tearing out and you're gutting it, then they're gonna want you to put it in. But if you're not doing that, this expense is way too much to make a sprinkler.
Understood.
Yeah.
so anyway, that was probably the primary thing that the council had questions about. The rest of it, a lot of it's just going to the new code. There's, been some updated things there that are at play. But anyway, it's kind of the second phase of that. So actually what we will be doing, we've scheduled in December for Rick Fout to come in and give you guys a little overview of those changes. So he'll be able to answer some more questions for you as well. So, and that'll be going through hearing process at that point in time. And then we had a discussion about, it's called Blue River Pathways Screening, and a work session on that. And so I'm going to let Sarah kind of explain what we discussed there.
Quickly talked with the council to gauge their preliminary interest on making some code updates to our policy 37, which is the Riverwalk Special Area Policy. So right now that section defines the area between Ski Hill and Park on the backside of Main Street along the river front, east and west side, and gives opportunities for Riverwalk compatible improvements. And there's some incentivization in that policy as well, but we haven't had that many people take advantage to do those Riverwalk compatible improvements. If you read the policy, it's kind of confusing. So we asked a couple different questions of the council and to see if they want us to go forward with looking at making some changes to that. I don't think my mic is on. So Susan probably can't hear me. Sorry about that. We asked them first, would they like us to implement a policy that requires screening for some of the activities that are going on back there? We noticed there's kind of a proliferation of restaurant material storage and some other like grease trap storage, those types of container waste and stuff. Whether they want us to make screening of that type of storage mandatory, or require like additional landscaping to cover that up. And then we also asked if they're interested in us looking at changes to increase those incentives that we are offered to businesses and property owners in order to encourage better activation of the space along the Riverwalk back there. There was some hesitancy from the mayor and a couple others to make those screening requirements mandatory at this time, just with the current uncertainty and economic pressures on businesses. So instead, they want us to focus more on the incentivization part. So our first task, I think, is we're going to get together with, we're trying to seek out business owners in that area specifically. We're going to invite a select group for a work session and then get some good feedback, hopefully, and then eventually come back. We'll probably have a work session with the Planning Commission and as well as the council when we have some more concrete ideas of how we want to go with that.
There's already some incentives in place there. We'd wait, for example, we'd waive parking requirement if someone had parking and they wanted to remove it. to activate their space. And if you know where the property behind the Crown is, you know, it's the Sons of Norway Park. That used to be just a ugly dirt gravel area with a really blasé, rear-facing, building facade. The town back about 18 years ago actually did a deal with Bunchman, Rick Bunchman, who owns that building, and we gave them we provided $130,000 worth of improvements back there, including adding like little dormers and architectural features, and then a bunch of landscaping, grass and everything. The before and after pictures are pretty stark. So that's one of the few examples where we've had one of these folks on the Riverwalk pursuing these Riverwalk compatible improvements that we will allow. But we think there's other incentives that might be out there. Maybe it's waiving certain, you know, our employee mitigation fees, for example, because right now, if you want to put a deck out, you gotta provide housing for at a half of the rate of inside. But you do have to provide some housing for the employees that are generated. But maybe if we really want to see some of these spaces activated, maybe we, you know, get rid of that requirement. And there's some other things like that that we could be doing. So we're going to just explore and see what the businesses have in terms of, they may have a whole other set of ideas that we haven't thought of that might be things that we can do to help that. So it's activating spaces, but it's also making them more attractive as well, as Sarah was mentioning. So yeah, that's where we're hopefully get somewhere on that down the road here. Because there are a couple spaces, if you're walking down the Riverwalk, you see them, you're like, that's not a, you know, that could definitely look better.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And smell better.
There are any specific ones that you're targeting?
We can't.
I mean, like just general areas.
The southernmost area.
Like 4 blocks.
To your imagination.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Things going with the pilot program for delivery. Are they gonna?
It's going really well. They continue to add distributors where they've got, you know, they've got Shamrock on board now. I mean, they've got most of the distributors coming, and I don't know how noticeable it is, but there's a lot less trucks in town now and parked and idling and stuff like that. So it's a huge, I think, win overall. And
Almost
yeah.
got run over by a cart coming out of the garage where the post office is. I was walking down the sidewalk and he wasn't gonna stop.
Yeah. Anyway, it's by all accounts, it's been successful, and hopefully continue to be. We do have that, you know, eventually there's going to be redevelopment happening on that property. And so, you know, where we have the temporary facility right now. So we hope we can work out some kind of deal with the property owner there, but you know, we'll have to wait and see how that shakes out. Yeah.
I have a question about all the work by the power company going on up my valley, Tiger Valley. Are they bringing stuff up to code, or what's going on there?
I don't know what do you with the
What
Excel.
are you talking about?
Just been out there like right in front of the golf course. I mean, for 4 or 5 days, they had, you know, stop sign people out there. I don't know what they were doing.
Yeah, I haven't heard. I haven't seen it.
A reliability upgrade.
I don't know, I wondered if it was, you know, how they're going to like this different billing cycle where you get charged more for
Yeah.
peak hours. I don't know. I mean, it's totally what I guessed, but
Yeah. I mean, they came through my neighborhood a month ago and were just, to Chris's point, trimming trees everywhere.
no, they were,
Yeah.
they have a whole new electrical box there or something.
Hmm.
I mean, there was one before, but it's bigger.
They're replacing the one you hit last winter.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
Can you tell us about the water meter replacement that they did?
I just had mine done last week. Yeah.
Can't reach mine.
Go down McCain Road. where those storage containers are, and there's all those boxes that are sitting out there. Those are all the old water meters. Piles and piles of them.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I
They
just.
say they need to update them every so many years, and I don't think mine had been replaced in like 20 years, so.
Isn't it so they can read it from their car? They don't have to walk to it.
Yep.
Yeah, they're going from,
Yeah.
instead of just charging you based on the number of bathrooms you have, it's gonna be your actual water usage.
That's a win for all the empty houses.
They knew what your usage was.
But they,
Yeah.
this can make it more accurate or something
But
like that.
that, yeah, I'm
I
sure.
think
that's
it's
true.
digital reading.
It enables the reading, not having to be on site, but there's kind of like a tier where you basically, if you stayed below, you kind
Yeah.
of paid whatever that amount was. But
Yeah.
when you went above it, then you
Yeah.
paid kind of on a per gallon basis above the initial.
Yeah.
Mhm.
It just allows for real-time monitoring. So like,
Mhm.
if you were to, if your pipes were to burst, the town would know it based on like some remote, like they could sense that there's a lot of water being used in this zone. And then they can narrow down to your specific house and they'll contact you and say, hey, you might want to check because you're using a ton of water right now.
No more midnight lawn watering.
Had a tea before the meeting.
Well, thank you, Mark. We want to talk about replacing me?
Yeah, do we ever?
Sheath.
Where do we start?
Oh, I don't know.
You're irreplaceable.
Thank you. I was fishing there and
We're gonna miss you.
Well, so we would certainly entertain motions, or the chair would, for
So,
chair
man,
and vice chair.
This is your last meeting?
who's not had the
It's not
opportunity?
ready.
it's the year, every year we
He's already
we redo it, right? So that's what's on the agenda.
Great job while you were remote.
Yeah. Susan,
Can I nominate her?
I would nominate our vice chairman, Susan, to be the new chairman.
I'll second that.
What's
Sure she can hear you.
say you, Susan? You here?
That's why
I'm here.
when you tune in remotely, Susan. So
We are nominating you to take over.
Yeah, so I hear I actually missed the election to become vice chair, so I thought I ought to be here.
I can do a roll call. Mr. Guerra,
Yes.
Mr. Lees,
Yes.
Mr. Giller,
Yes?
Mr. Frechter,
Yes.
Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Ms. Proper,
Am I allowed to vote? Yes.
and Ms. Gort.
Yes.
All right, then I nominate Ms. Gort for vice chair.
Second.
Thank you.
Roll call.
Ms. Gort,
Yes.
Ms. Proper,
Yes.
Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Mr. Guerra,
Yes.
Mr. Lees,
Yes.
Mr. Frechter,
Yes.
Mr. Giller.
Yes. Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Yes,
Try to do my best.
been fun. All right, well, with that, unless anybody else has any fun things, grievances, praises, anything else, we'll move on. Yeah, okay, with that, it is 6:53 and I'll close the planning commission meeting for November 4th, 2025 with a nice little tap. Thanks, everybody.
Good night, Susan.
Thank you.
Good night.
Where is she?
Where are you,
Oh.
Susan?
I'm in St. Louis. We're driving cross country.
Is that Don behind you?
It is. He's not appropriately dressed.
Say goodnight then.
Okay.
One of his pajamas or something.